You might be the best player in your state. Come out to California, kids. I got 13-year-olds up here throwing 87, hitting balls 97 with drop 3 wood. Okay. Like there's competition everywhere. And you know what I tell those kids? I tell them your competition's son is 3 years older than you. Like if you're 14 right now and you get to the big leagues when you're 22 and everything in your life goes perfect, you're going to be competing with Mike Trout for a freaking job. Good luck.
All right, welcome everybody. This is ITTV episode 16. We've got Eugene Bleecker here with 108 Performance, and we're going to get into him in just a second here, but I want to go over some of the just normal details that we got to go through. If you guys want to reach out to us or follow us or anything, it's just straight at Indiana Twins. It's youtube.com/Indiana Twins, trying to keep it easy for you across the board. If you want to email us, it's indianatwins@gmail.com. So feel free to ask any questions. Also, during this live show, we're taking questions. We've got IG Live, Facebook Live over here. So if you've got questions, let us know. This one's going to be a little bit more free-flowing than the other ones. Eugene's request was that we kind of go a little more off the cuff and make it as real as possible, and we're big fans of that, so we're going to do that. Want to give a special shout-out to McDonald's in Mooresville, one of our sponsors who has a sign on one of our fields, but with no games right now, we just want to give them a little bit of recognition. And with that, instead of giving the resume of Eugene, I'll let him do it himself. So, Eugene, if you can kind of kick it off and tell us a little bit about your baseball background.
Where to begin? So I grew up super obsessed with the game. Nobody ever had to tell me to practice. It's all I ever wanted to do from the time I was really, really young. Fell in love with it early, went to an academy growing up for 10 years, and I got to learn from some brilliant Hall of Fame coaches, guys like Ed Blankmeyer and Don Cooper, and just tons of really, really awesome baseball guys. Went on to play in college, had a less than stellar college career. I was a catcher, didn't really hit very much. Played a couple years of some good baseball in the Jayhawk League in Kansas for the El Dorado Broncos. Got hurt my senior year of college, moved out to California trying to sign a free agent contract. And, drove around the country for a year and a half trying to, train and sign a contract, from the Frontier League, Can-Am League, independent professional baseball, the whole deal. Started coaching. And, I always knew I was going to coach when I was done playing. I was never going to do anything. I mean, I have twin daughters. One's named after the stadium I grew up going to watch games at. The other one's named after my favorite player. So I was always going to coach. Started coaching and realized I was a better coach than I was a player. And I'm glad that happened, and I figured that out quickly. Come from a family of educators and attorneys, so information and the ability to communicate it was always really important in my household growing up. So I kind of got in this thing, I guess you would say, early, and at a very lucky point in time. It was when things like Right View Pro and slow motion analysis and the internet were just starting to really catch some serious wind, and information was starting to get shared, and started going to conventions and trying to learn, and, rest is history.
I'm curious because I know Jason probably can, you talked about your grandfather had given you, before we started the show, a pretty sweet poster or thing that you had posted up. And I know Jason had a big influence with his grandpa with sports. What was your biggest influence with baseball? Is it just you started playing when you were little and it just caught on like fire, or like was there an influence from somebody?
Yeah, I think it was a little deeper than that. So I got another picture here. So I'm in my little garage studio now that we're locked out of shops. So this picture is of my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and Charlie Gehringer, right in front of Yankee Stadium. So my great-grandfather was the Bronx Borough president, and he ran for mayor in New York City, and so he was a politician in the Bronx. So they had box seats to Yankee Stadium when my grandfather was a kid. So, it was something that he always did and always loved and passed it on, to me. I grew up in his house, so that was definitely a big part of it. Just absolutely loved it. and I was blessed enough to get some really good influence other than just him. You know, I had some really good coaches and some really good academies that I was able to go to growing up that really provided some tremendous foundation and kind of fed the animal, if you will. You know, I was always the kid, like whether it was at camp or in class, like always had my hand up, right? Always asking questions and trying to get information. And, you know, he was working a lot and I needed another place I could go. So I was a kid, I collected baseball cards. I was playing Tecmo baseball. My first year of academy, I was 7. That was actually the first year Baseball Tonight aired. So, you know, I think that everything just kind of lined up for me, you know?
Yeah. So I'm going to let Jason get into this, but before I do, I'm going to preface with, when we got turned on to you, Eugene, a few years back, our first conversation was actually, it was you and then Jason, you can chime in. Who was the other one we were talking about?
Tewksbury was there and Stan Barksdale was there.
So we're a group of us at Pitchapalooza, and it was just a bunch of back and forth, and we had seen you talk, and then later you'd come out with a book in the next year or two. Like, so we've bought in quite a bit, literally and like financially and figuratively, to a lot of what you're doing. It's started to transform some of the things that we do. Jason's our president. He's been a big fan, so I'm gonna let him kind of start with the questions.
So I know you're a hitting guy, so I want to try to talk as much hitting as possible because that's kind of my area of passion as well. I know I've been following you on Facebook a lot, or not Facebook, on social media a lot here, and there's this debate on how loose movers are not as efficient as tight movers. Totally understand that. Makes perfect sense to me. I'm probably too lenient when it comes to letting a hitter be a hitter. I really try not to mess with a lot of the stuff that he comes into us with. But now that I've kind of got onto this whole loose mover, tight mover, and the efficiency ramifications of that, where do you find the loose movers and all the movement that they have to take out that slack and the inefficiencies that come with that? When do you force their hand and try to make them more efficient, even though the assessment tells us that may not be the right? Because at the end of the day, they got to hit in the game, right? They have to be good.
Here's the first. Okay, so this is a great question to start it off, right? Because it's loaded and there's a lot of awesome information that's going to come out of that. Can I do a screen share?
Yep.
Okay, so first of all, like before I do the screen share, assessments do not give us an understanding of that. Assessments give us an understanding of that. Here's what assessments give us. Assessments give us range of motion that is available in the bones, right? Passively. Okay, that's basically what the assessments are giving us. However, when we talk about things like hip-shoulder separation, okay, one of the things that people are failing to understand, and this is from top down. So I called Greg Rose because obviously some of the information that seemingly comes out from TPI and On Base U and some of the information that comes out from us seems like we're arguing and there's different points, right? And there was, but not anymore. I called Greg last Saturday. We got on the phone for an hour. I figured out why there's miscommunication. And we got on the phone on Sunday with 40 coaches and the best minds on the planet from, it was like 4, 5, 6 big league pitching coaches, a ton of 15 coordinators, a whole bunch of brilliant guys. So here's the deal. Greg's looking at data. Okay, Greg's looking at data. He's just looking at numbers, okay? And what he sees is that hip-shoulder separation doesn't occur in amateurs. It occurs more in elites. It doesn't occur as well, right? That's a fact. That's what the data says. That's a fact. Totally. I don't disagree with that, okay? But here's the thing. Somebody posted it. Did you guys see the thing I put out with Zach DeCamp on the mobility?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So somebody commented on that post. And their comment was, it reminds me of this. And it was a video of Greg Rose talking about where he sees golfers with low back pain. Okay. So check this out. He's talking about elite golfers and how they only get 45 degrees, roughly say on average, 45 degrees of counter rotation right before the downswing. Counter rotation is also what? That's also hip shoulder separation, friend. Because my pelvis is facing this way and my trunk just counter rotating. Okay.
Right.
They're only getting to 50 total before they connect. I want you to consider that in your mind for a second. 5 degrees of added from the load. 5. Let's think about what 5 is if we take a little laser pointer right here. Okay, 5 degrees. It's not very much. Okay, that added 5 degrees, my friends, is a stretch reflex. That's from when the lower half decels really well, your upper body can get slingshotted forward. Okay, that's happening in a ridiculously small window. You cannot passively assess like rate of force, the slingshot of rate of force development. You cannot passively assess the rubber bands getting stretched out in a small way and then snapping forward. But in baseball, what's happened when people assess, they're thinking that if I take my bones and I angle them this way, and then I angle my other bones that way, that we're achieving more hip-shoulder separation. But that's not good hip-shoulder separation. That's false hip-shoulder separation. When Rose sees guys getting hurt in their lower backs, they're only getting to like 35, and then they're getting to like 50, 60, right? So that huge increase, and then the lower back, the torsion on the spine gets yanked into the upper back, and that's where guys get lower back injuries. I totally agree. We see the same thing, but there's a difference between the data that's actually happening and how you create it. If you want to create better hip-shoulder separation in a pitcher, like the presentation we did at Palooza, if you tell a kid to pimp the finish and he does it well, his hip-shoulder separation is going to get better. And so is his rate of force development, because he's landing in a better position and the stretch reflex through the body is happening better because it's transitioning faster. It's not passively opening up and dragging the arm. So like the understanding of what separation is really important too, right? So when it comes to like loose versus stiff, think about it like, so for everybody listening, and I know that we kind of got deep in the weeds there right off the get-go, but we're going to make this real simple. I'm going to do a screen share, right, from part of our courses, okay? And this is going to give you guys a really good understanding of what this whole thing is. So you just open this up real quick. So rather than thinking about muscles and bones, I want you to think about the whole body, because that's kind of the thing. Like, you guys realize that like doctors, a lot of them still look at the human body like this on the left. This model, the Borrellian model, this is from the 1600s. It's from 1680. And they still think of the body as just machine, bricks stacked on top of bricks, fulcrums and levers, right? But the body is not like that, okay? The body is omnidirectional. It can move in a whole bunch of different ways, okay? So that ain't it. The body is not broken down into individual pieces. It's this one big continuous thing, right? This one big integrated unit where everything is connected to everything, okay? So the two biggest things about what we teach, there is no one swing we teach. There is no one throw we teach, right? We teach concepts of foundational movement and then individualize hitting and throwing based on the mover, right? But these are the two core concepts. One is like, look, everybody that walks, they crawl, they walk and crawl the same. The upper body and the lower body go in opposite directions. When my right arm goes forward, right, my trunk is rotating one way. At that same point in time, my left leg is going forward. My pelvis is rotating the other way. That constant counter rotation is where human locomotion is built. All motion starts through there, whether it's a kick, a throw, a punch, makes no difference, okay? And that's what we want to see from our athletes, is that counter rotation. If you take someone and you put them on a cortex board, right, or have them jump in the air and try to throw something with their upper body, their lower body is going to go the opposite direction, because you have to resist rotation and create stability to be able to rotate really efficiently and really well. And if you look in any other sport, if you're going to throw a kick with your right leg, your left arm has to come across your body. You have to compress your body. You have to work your right arm across left leg, okay? As the right arm gets extended, right leg goes back. When we watch great hitters throughout the history of the game, like whether they step close, start close, kick back, right? Doesn't matter. Those positions are really, really important, okay? So here's why. So if I take, at the end of the day, we're trying to move a weight through space. That's it. Whether it's 5 ounces or 32 ounces, we're trying to move a weight through space. If you put somebody on a flywheel or you ask them to rotate a heavy weight or with a heavy amount of pullback with no coaching, you just tell them, move that thing fast, move that thing hard. The upper body is going to rotate around an anchored base. Okay, it's going to rotate around an anchored base, and it needs to. So think about like if you're going to squat, right, you toe out. And the reason you toe out is because our glutes are external rotators, right? So to use them, we have to get to that externally rotated position, okay? So I'm going to do another screen share right now, and I'm going to show you even another video here of a big league pitcher, and this is probably not something people are accustomed to looking at, but it's really important to. So if I pull up Garrett Cole and we just watch this video of it, because hitting and pitching is the same thing. So I like hitting more, but I'm a pitching guy, I'm a hitting guy, I'm a movement guy, right? So this is a pretty easy.
Now he's ahead of Leon, 1 and 2.
Right? Like we'd all like to be able to do. That's 100 miles an hour. Right, and that's in the 7th inning. That's his 101st pitch.
Strikeout. Now he's ahead of Leon, 1 and 2.
So now let's take a look at the positioning he's in. So right before foot strike, think about where's his pelvis facing? Where's his upper body facing? They're facing third base. He's still in a good position to transfer that weight and to hold on to that rear glute. And then when he goes to rotate, the rotation from the middle is going to peel his heel up. But watch what it does. Which way does it turn as he's getting through the ball?
Towards first.
His heel turns towards first into external rotation. That's right. And that is the same thing as when George Springer's heel slams back down into the ground, or when Joey Votto's heel gets picked up and then anchors back down into impact. Which is also the same thing as, if you go back and look video of Mark McGuire, Matt Williams, like anybody that you want, like good players, they decel, right? They decel well, and they move well across their body, okay? So it started with loose movers and stiff movers, right? So, like, your body is this big web of tension. Your bones are like the rods, right? And your fascia is like these ropes. Okay, so it's just a big rubber band. Okay, that's it. It's a big rubber band. And we have X's across our body from this shoulder to that, all the way down to that foot. It's not just across here. It wraps all the way around into the foot, from here to here and from there to there. Okay, when you watch good players, okay, when you watch good players hit baseballs hard consistently or throw baseballs hard well, those X's into impact are creating force in opposite directions. That's what gives us the stability. If I want to rotate this really, really fast, if that doesn't stay anchored and I just let it get pulled, then I'm going to keep on rotating. I have no ability to create or optimize length-tension relationships. I can't create stability, right? So coaches forever have used words like balance, like you want to be balanced. Yes, you want to be balanced, but you can't have balance unless you have stability. And you can't have stability unless you have tension, right? So you have to be able to have that tension to be able to create the stability. So in a long-winded kind of answer to your original question, right away, little kids, man, did you guys see that video floating around of that little kid that hit that bomb the other day and his dad was going nuts? Like, yeah,
that was fantastic.
Yes, when you look at that video, like what's happening? What's happening? Why is it happening? He's 4 years old, man. Nobody's ever taught him anything. So why is he able to do what he was doing? Well, like, let's take a look at it. 4 years old. That is a nuke. When you think about like force relative to size, strength level, what kind of strength level does he really have? He's 4. He doesn't have muscles. Okay, little kids line up the actions of throwing as hard as they can and swinging as hard as they can with efficiency, because they don't have muscles to compensate. When I tell my daughters to swing harder, they anchor more. They stop better. Their direction improves. Muscles aren't there to compensate, but with a little kid like this with no muscles, you have to use the tension available. So as he goes to rotate, watch what happens. Whoop! He might as well be in his starting position. Look at him. He's back in his stance. His bat's just in a different place. But that's what gives him the ability to produce the force in that direction, right? If you're sitting at home right now and you have a swivel chair at your house, I better turn that off. That dad's about to start yelling. He gets all excited about his kid. There he goes. The video was awesome. It was awesome. He was freaking out. So if you're on a swivel chair at your house and you put your feet up and you try to turn your upper body to punch this way as hard as you can, your lower body is going to go the other direction. Elites move the same way on the ground as they do in the air. They just use the ground to amplify the force in the movement, not to compensate. And in baseball, especially hitting, we have such a small window of time and space to get to the ball. Efficiency is the king. There are a lot of different hand paths, barrel paths. Some guys are more flat. Some guys are more vertical, right? But efficiency is the king. So, like, we want to do that right away. We're creating that right away. The younger they are, the more externally goal-based it is, the more constraints we're using to create that stuff. I was talking to Scott Brown the other day, the pitching coach at Vanderbilt. He has our courses, and he's going through the hitting stuff with his son. And as soon as he went like heavy bat with velo, like the kid started to kick back and the ball started to go farther. He didn't have to tell him to do it. He just had to put a heavy bat in his hand and throw velo at him, right? Because kids are the ultimate self-organizers. As you get older, we don't self-organize the same way. We've conditioned our brains and our bodies to move a certain way. So then more things need to take place to get players to adapt or change.
Have you started to see guys that you've worked with at a younger age that are moving more efficiently, and then as they progress to getting older, does it start to clean itself up and look like a normal swing as opposed to when they're young and it kind of looks like they're all over the place?
Meaning, so say that again?
So you've got the 4-year-old who a coach might say, that doesn't look like a good swing, I need to fix that. But we're arguing that it's the most efficient for him. As he gets older and gets muscles, have you worked with guys like that where they were younger and you got them moving more natural that might not have looked great, but then as they got older, you're seeing that it kind of equals out and starts to look like?
To be honest, I really don't care what it looks like. I care if it works. Like, I don't care about anybody else's opinion of anything. I care about what works for the players. So, like, I would never – Hunter Pence doesn't look good in the beginning and he doesn't look good at the end, but everything that happens in between is what needs to happen to be an elite major league hitter. You know what I mean? So I don't care what anyone's opinion is. I care if it works. And like when kids, part of the reason we – biomechanically speaking, because we have a lab and all that good stuff, but biomechanically speaking, the closest thing to big leaguers is 11U kids that have never had like bad coaching before, right? Like, because they haven't been told to do things a certain way. And as a result, they naturally just already move really well, right? And that happens a lot of the time. Does it mean every kid I have twin daughters, okay? One of them so far is a better hitter. The other one's a better thrower, right? And one of them has learned one thing faster and the other one has learned the other thing faster. The only thing they've been given is, heavy objects. No, in fact, I'm doing a fun project with them right now. We took them out the other day and they've never been given any kind of cues or anything. And internal, external didn't make a difference. Never gave them anything. So we took them out to the field the other day, and I was curious how if you told people something and they had never heard it before, how would they interpret it, especially when you have two individuals with the same genetic makeup, right? Because they're twins. So same age, same embryo, same everything. What happens when you tell them, I'm going to post the videos to Twitter here coming up soon when we're done cutting them, and I'm going to do a poll and ask people, what do you think she was cued to do on this one? And you're going to see Brooklyn and Mackenzie, and one of them you're going to think was cued to swing up. The other one you're going to think was cued to swing down, but they were both cued to swing up. they were both cued to swing up. So it's all about the interpretation stuff. You know, it's how they interpret it. But good movement is good movement, and generally good movement looks really good. Like generally good movement doesn't look bad. Sometimes it can look more awkward, right? But those are the kids that the coaches say, oh, that kid's got a bad swing, but he can really hit, man. No, he doesn't have a bad swing. He does not have a bad swing. He has a great swing. That's why he hits well, right? Like people, if your interpretation of a good swing is something that's aesthetically pleasing, but it has a bad rate of force development, bad time to contact, bad space and direction, it's not a good swing, even if it looks good to your eye, right? So what matters is that those foundational building blocks are there. You know, at least that's what's important to me. So, yeah.
So my next one, Eugene, would be about bandwidth. I know in your hitting courses, I bought both your hitting and pitching courses the day they came out and had them done in 24 hours. So I loved them. The thing that really struck me with that was the bandwidth comment. And we have very similar, the KMIs that you use are very similar to the ones that we used in our video analysis sheet. So I was pretty happy to see that we were at least in the same ballpark with that. But I think with every single KMI that you list in your course, there's bandwidth within that KMI.
100%. 100%.
And I want to know what's allowable, what's not allowable, and how do you know when someone's left that bandwidth and we need to rein something back in? Like what do you see? What do you see there? Like what's your cue with the hitter to know? That's probably, like for example, the back foot. We want it to be anchored as long as we can. But you can see major league guys, sometimes the back foot starts to come up and the pelvis starts to rotate a little bit before they get into their front foot. Not all of them. Some of them land on a horse perfectly. Some of them, the back heel starts to pop a little bit earlier. Obviously, they're in the major leagues. That's okay for them. But we don't work with major leaguers. We work with 9-year-olds sometimes, right? So
yeah. So yeah, I would say yes and no on that. There's a lot of major leaguers that wish they had better seasons, right? So like there's big leaguers that are improving themselves all the time. So just because they're in the big leagues doesn't mean good is relative to potential, right? So
right.
Like, there are guys there that could be better, right? And that's, you know, at every level of the game. So all things have bandwidth, right? So like when we talk about anchoring, it's about the overall. That's why, okay, so when we did our courses, we do not allow anyone to have our membership, right, without having our courses first. And there's a reason for that. Drills are just drills if you don't understand what they're for. People get too caught up in the angles and positions of certain things and they lack understanding of the whole, right? So what we were trying to do with the courses was get everybody to, I heard this amazing quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. I took his master class not long ago, and he said, "Wisdom is the distilled essence of knowledge once you've forgotten all the details." Think about that for a second. Wisdom is the distilled essence of knowledge once you've forgotten all the details. So Nolan Ryan, when he got interviewed talking about when he throws his best fastball, I saw this video pop up a couple weeks ago. He's like, you know, for me, when I'm throwing my best fastball, I know I need to get my best extension. But for me to do that, right, for me to get out here with my arm, I know I got to keep my cue is to keep my lead shoulder closed as long as I possibly can, right? Nolan Ryan didn't know anything about spin rate. Nolan Ryan didn't know anything about any of this. But what he knew was that he needed to keep his front shoulder closed to get his extension, to get his best pitch off. And he's 100% right. Just like that position you saw Cole get in where he was closed at landing, that's the position coaches have been fighting like crazy to get hitters and pitchers to land in for a really long time. You're flying open. You're not staying closed. You're not staying engaged. You're peeling off direction. Like it's not just important for force production. It's important for force transmission with direction. Nolan Ryan had wisdom. He didn't get lost in details. What's most important is that we create the right result for the player, which comes from the movement, right? It's tough because people get so caught up in like different. I look at the body just with the big X's, man, just with the big X's. And if that back foot is anchoring back into the ground in the air behind. It can anchor in the air. You can anchor on the ground. You can anchor in the air. As long as your rubber band from that back foot to this upper body making contact is working opposite directions into impact, it makes no difference. If your heel gets peeled and you lack ER, so it gets peeled like very, very early, right? And it turns early, but then it anchors back in or helps you stop, and it helps stop. It doesn't matter, right? If you leave the ground off the front, a lot of times guys that are super twitchy, okay? Any of you kids out there that are listening to this, or parents, if you have a kid that over rotates and he's super twitchy, a lot of times those kids lack dorsiflexion and they have flat feet, right? But we're also born with flat feet, guys. God made us that way. We have arches that we develop, right, because of shoes, but God did not make shoes, right? Man made shoes, okay? A lot of the best athletes have flat feet and they have direct contact with the ground for a longer period of time, and they're able to push out of it faster. So when you have a guy that over rotates or spins on his backside, say you check and he's got flat feet. Well, for that guy, if you can get him to be heavier into his front side into landing, his back foot is going to release. And if it's a little bit released and he's not stuck on top of it, right, it's not going to push him out and around, right? And after he gets to that front side, when he goes to turn, his back foot is going to anchor in by sliding and kicking back behind him. More athletic guys generally get to the front, they release the back just a touch into the landing, and then it re-anchors behind them and pulls out slack the opposite direction of the rotation. So, like, the whole thing is just a big continuous problem-solving exercise. And I look at it as a collaboration with my players or the organization, whether it's a pro team that we're like with, a college team, a high school kid. We just got done doing Zooms with a bunch of our 10 and 12-year-olds today, right? Like it's all about the collaboration between the individual and the coach and having big picture focus, understanding what affects what, recognizing that, like, okay, I don't have a scap load. Well, why don't I have a scap load? I could work on it, right? But if the reason I don't do that well is because that's an elastic move that pulls out slack, but I'm not decelling well down low, like, why am I going to focus on this when if I decelled better down low, I'd have better stretch reflex continuously up the body, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you went right into my next question with that, because my next question was, you talk about things being coachable or not coachable points, like the scap load, like the kickback. Is that all based on the success they're having on the field, on when you want to maybe intervene with that? Or it is, because to me, like, if the hitter's a good hitter, I don't want to mess with a whole lot. Whether he has a great scap load or a kickback or not a kickback, like, none of that matters if he's hitting well in games.
Yes,
and the same thing is true.
No, you got to be careful with that, though, right? Because, like, here's the thing, right? So, look, the reason that – so I've known you guys now, and kind of we've known of each other and talked for a little while, a couple of years now, right? You guys are good coaches, man. You guys work your butts off for your players, and you work your butts off for information, and your players are very lucky to have coaches that are so invested in them, okay? You have to – coaches are now, like – it's like some of this information has made people afraid to coach. They're afraid to mess stuff up. Like, you're not going to ruin a guy with one cue or one switch. The only way that any players are ever going to get better is by doing things differently than they did today, right? If they do things the same way they did today, tomorrow, they're going to be the same person. If their goal is, if they're projectable as a D3 guy right now and they want to play D1 baseball, if you don't try stuff, that's doing a disservice, even if he's a good hitter in his high school. Because if he's facing 83-mile-an-hour guys throwing pus in high school and that doesn't project to the next level, leaving him alone doesn't get him where he needs to be. You have to just trust your instincts and trust your gut. You watch swings all the time, bro. Like, it's about being creative. On one of the calls with there are literally, we have big league guys and professional hitting and pitching coaches doing some really funny stuff that people think is funny, that works. Because if it works, it doesn't matter. Like, if your lead elbow gets pinned, okay, and you can't get space, dude, if you take a swim floaty and you put it around the lead arm, guess what happens? All of a sudden it elevates, they get space, arm clears, barrel's on plane. All you got to do is put a swim floaty on the lead arm. And it works a lot of the time, right? If you have a guy throwing and his arm gets stuck too tight, right? Sometimes guys get stuck and they get pinched. Put the floaty on this arm. Just being aware of it is going to make him get space and allow him to free up that shoulder. You have to be able to coach. You have to be able to coach. You can't get scared to coach. And if you're working on decel patterning and rate of force development, there's no one that doesn't need that. Like, there is no one that doesn't need to get better rate of force development with better hinging and better space and better direction, right? Like, there's no one that doesn't need to land in better positions and work on that and work on creating stability into landing. If you take a water ball and hang it over the kid's head in the air, put him on a raised implement and have him jump off of it and try to land and stabilize. He can start with it over here, jump off of it, try to land and stabilize. Like, all of those things, and even movement-wise, you don't know until you try. You don't know until you try. And the game success, that part of that has to be predicated on the player. Like, what are the players' goals? We have to align with what the players want, because it's their dream, it's their future. We don't belong telling them you can't do this. Look, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in player development. Okay, I don't coach. I stopped coaching teams. I miss it. I stopped doing it a long time ago to just do this all day, every day. And I've seen kids 19 years old walk in after getting cut from their junior college throwing 78. A year later, step back on the same campus and make the team, end up the closer at 89 and 91. So if a 19-year-old kid can do that and he moves like crap, I mean, it was like Groundhog Day for 7 months. It was like he didn't learn anything for the first 7 months. Every day it seemed like he got to level 7 from level 1, but then the next day he walked in and it was level 1 all over again. You know, like it's crazy, right? He just does his brain. He doesn't have good proprioception. His brain doesn't dance well. He can't dance. He's not a good mover. Can't control himself in space. We had to work on that. If a guy like that can go from 78 at 19 to 91, like, I mean, players have the capability to do a lot of things, you know? So like they can't tell anybody that they should never think to themselves or let anybody tell them they can't do something. And our job, all of us, is to help facilitate whatever that desire is for them and create the best possible environment to make that happen and pull out every stop in doing so. Like, no stones unturned.
I'm going to ask a question after I talk about decel, about how you guys train that and incorporate that. But I think something that is difficult to explain to athletes of all ages sometimes is decel. What are you seeing is a good unlock for guys that they don't understand it at first when you're like, oh, decel, and you explain it? What's kind of that next level of explaining it and almost dumbing it down so that they really get it? Because we're talking a lot about decel and we understand it, but I know there's people out that are just like, I still don't completely get decel.
Let me tell you something, dude. That's a great question, because parents don't feel bad. I know hitting coaches that have lots of technology that still don't understand it. Okay. So like decel is rate of force development. Okay. So think about it like this. After we land, okay, the ball is 15 feet in front of us. Okay. Or after we land, when we pitch, our goal is to get all the energy in our body to leave as quickly as possible. We don't want a car with a top engine speed of 200. We don't even care if our top engine speed is only 100, but we have to be able to get off the line in 0 to 60 and beat everybody. We need speed that happens fast, right? Not speed that takes a long time. We're not lifting heavy weights. We're moving at a really, really fast and a really small window. So we have to get that energy from landing and impart that energy into the ball as quickly as possible, okay? So there's a lot of different ways to explain it. I'll use a couple. So one, we'll do this with a screen share here, and we're just gonna show a hitter. We're gonna show a guy who's 5'11", and hitting the big leagues for a long time with an amazing career, and hit balls really far and really hard. And a lot of people said he had some of the fastest hands they'd ever seen. Okay, Chase Utley, right? Now, let's take a look at, let's see what Chase Utley looks like when he hits. Now, one thing you should notice that his whole body, everything's stopping, kind of in order, right? Like this is kind of stopping first, and then that's kind of stopping second, and then the barrel's continuing to kind of work through. But think about the shoulder angle and think about the jersey. Look how his jersey's twisting up that other direction through the ball. That's twisting up because all this back here is stopped. From that early point in the swing, like he doesn't keep rotating anymore. This is a home run on an inside pitch.
Eugene, what's funny about Utley is I look at a lot of hitter videos, and I used to look at him live in games, and there was just something about his swing that I couldn't put my finger on. And when I started reading your stuff about decel and stopping, he's the first guy that I was like, that's it. Utley was doing like immediately in my brain, I had all these hitters that were just cycling through my brain. And when I read that chapter in the book, I was just like, that's Chase Utley. That's the weird thing that I saw from him my whole life, or his whole career, that I couldn't quite put a finger on what I was seeing. And that opened that window for me. Like I immediately was like, oh my gosh, that's the example.
Okay, so here's the thing though. And there are some guys it's really easy to see. And for Utley, that's why he was able to be smaller and hit balls as far as he did and hit the way that he did, right? But it's inherent and across the board with everyone. There's nobody that doesn't. It's a biological necessity to really deliver force with any kind of consistency and direction. So now let's take a look at like the greatest hit tool guy maybe that's ever lived, right? A guy who had very limited coaching, farm boy, and even if you made it to the big leagues tomorrow, played 20 years and got 200 hits a year, you'd still never have as many hits as Pete Rose, right? So let's take a look at Pete Rose taking BP. Let's see what that looks like.
Wow.
Space, direction, hinge, decel. Like you see the lines on his jersey, right? Everything just stops. Okay? That's deceleration. That is bracing for impact. I'll show you some more decel. Here's decel right here from a 4-year-old. Let's look at what a 4-year-old looks like when they decel. There's another nuke from a little kid. Look at his dad looking at him after like, who's this kid? Who is this kid? I got Mike Trout. Son, what's going on? So watch his front foot. See how he steps across at the end?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where else do we see that? Well, let's see here. If I pull up, okay, so on the right, there's a guy named Mike Trout. He's pretty good. He hits balls well. And here's a kid on the left that trains at 108. Similar size. This is a kid that's 6'3", 6'3 and a half, 235 pounds, ran 6'5", 6'6" at the pro days, so he can move. Outfielder, huge engine, had terrible breaks. His junior year in college at a local Division I, he hit like 260 with 1 jack and like 3 doubles. Okay, not good. Senior year, he hit 380 with, 370 something, 380 with, I think, 14 jacks, 17 doubles, got drafted in the 17th round. Okay, because he learned how to stop. So is Mike Trout trying to step across there? No, probably not. Is the little kid? No. Is he? Yeah, it was cued in. All I did was show him video of Trout and say, hey, try to do that. And then all of a sudden he started decelling because you literally can't step across unless you're in a good position to do it. So if you over rotate and peel off, you can't do it. Our brain maps backwards. It's the same thing as the recoil. When you tell a guy to recoil, right, that brain's mapping backwards. He has to put himself in a better position to actually be able to execute. That make sense?
Yep.
Here's another guy. Here's more decel. You watch Edwin Encarnacion taking BP. You have to think about it kind of like, McGuire. So if I have two levers, okay, and they're connected by a hinge, okay, and I have the hinge at 90 degrees, and I'm holding on to this lever right here, okay, and my goal is to turn this one to try to get this one to really get delivered, okay? I can drag it, and it's like, oh, no, I need to create more force. Let me swing harder. Okay, drag it more, swing harder, drag it more. That's a way to create more force. It is, it's a way. But that's what creates cage swings that don't play in games, and guys who yank like a monster in the cage and they're happy with their exit velo, but they can't hit in the games and wonder why, right? And that's the guys that are desperately trying to throw as hard as they can, but don't understand how, and they can't throw strikes. They're yanking that lever to pull this one. If you want to make this lever go real fast, stop this one really fast. That's how you make that one go fast. Big league players, regardless of like whether they're stepping close, kicking back, like they're bracing for impact, right? Little kids brace for impact in anticipation of impact. Have a kid hit a dodgeball or a basketball or a soccer ball, watch what their body does. Have them try to hit a med ball, watch what their body, just in anticipation, knowing that it's going to be there. They want to brace for contact. You want to hit a baseball like it weighs 500 pounds, even though it only weighs 5 ounces. And to be able to do that, you have to put your body in a good position to do it. And you have to be able to create leverage and tension and have space. Okay, like those are the key components. And that's what the really elite guys do better than everybody, regardless of how it looks, right? So when you do those things and focus on them, I find that a lot of the other stuff, like the look, cleans up. And then the things that don't clean up, you can better pinpoint with accuracy. Because if things up here don't go well because we're not doing things well down there, like let's start doing that better first. And then after all this other stuff cleans up, then we can pinpoint and individualize way more effectively, right? So, yeah, and it works the same for pitching and hitting. Like when you watch Garrett Cole and Vasquez throw 100 and they make it look easy, like I'll do one more screen share real quick. You know, if you look at Felipe Vasquez throwing a ball 100, like this is about as good as it gets and about as effortless as it gets, right? So now let's take a look at some of the positions they're in. So like he's ready to throw, right? The ball's up, he's down. Where's his hips facing? Where's his shoulders facing? Look at his back foot holding on to ER, right? That's where you're going to get rate of force development from. And then after he goes to rotate, arms working around the trunk beautifully, right? Watch that heel go back that way. Just trying to hold on into that ER move. You can't rotate fast if you're not stable. You can't be stable unless you have tension. Period. Like that's period. So it's almost like people think that it's almost like they think it's like their interpretation of what swinging and throwing hard is. It's like they think that it's turning their body as fast as they can. And because the attention's on the body, none of the energy goes to the bat. Or it's about moving the bat as fast as you can. So all the energy goes into the bat and the body, But at the end of the day, the energy isn't supposed to go into the bat or into the body. It's supposed to go into the ball. It's supposed to go into the ball. So if I want to apply energy into that object at that one moment in time, and I want to strike that object, whether I'm releasing it like I'm bowling or pitching, or whether I'm hitting it, right? I want to strike the object, right? We don't want to drag the bat. We want to use the bat to strike the object, to deliver force at that moment in time. And too many guys are busy dragging their arms through, dragging their bat through, right? They don't know how to decel because they're focused on the wrong things, or their brain sees it differently. So as far as efficiency, I want that day one. I don't care if the kid's 9 years old, or if he's 13 years old, or if he's 25 years old. We had a big leaguer this offseason, 8-year big leaguer, was in AAA last year, AAA, and not pitching well in AAA. And this entire offseason, all we did with him was try to get him back to where he was when he was really good, and maybe even a little better, even a little more efficient. We did 0 pitch design, right? We did 0 velocity training, right? All we did was try to get him to move better. His velocity went up. His pitches were gross. His command improved by a ridiculous amount, right? And he got signed by the big league team that drafted him, and they said he looks better now than he did when he was drafted. And this is a guy that's a left-handed specialist in a game that's being removed from. So there were really big results there. There was no focus on pitch design, no focus on anything except for just moving better. That was it. Just pinpointing things and moving better. Everybody has better things available. Garrett Cole got better. Look at Garrett Cole from a few years ago. Like, if you look at him 5 years ago, he got better. If he didn't do what he did, he's not performing the way he's performing, you know? So everybody.
So I think it's good I think the reason I wanted to ask that is parents need to hear that little Johnny, who's 10, who's batting 500 in Indiana, still needs to get better, right? We still got to experiment with him. We still have to test things out because we've got to get him to whatever his potential is. So it's
100%. 100%. Very well said. And for all your parents out there listening, like, look, you guys are very lucky, and I mean that. You guys are very lucky to have coaches like you do trying to run an organization the way that these guys are. And I will tell you right now, one thing that no college coach or scout has ever asked me ever, okay, ever. How'd Johnny do in his 12-year-old travel season? How did Billy do in his 13U perfect game tournament? How did Jason do when he was 16 at the JOs? They don't care. They're judging based on what they see in front of them now and based on the recommendations. And like, if sometimes parents used to ask me like, well, I don't understand it. How come there's colleges here and they're talking to Billy, but they're not talking to my son, Joey? Joey, my son, went 4 for 4 and he made every play. And Billy went 0 for 4 and Billy made 2 errors. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but Billy runs a 6.7 and Billy hits balls really hard, right? And Billy has rate of force development and they can see it. Joey hit a couple hanging changeups today and he had a great game, and that's not taking anything away from him. But, Joey's tools are not ready for that level of baseball right now, and they see that and they know that. So, like, parents, like, trust the coaches, listen to them, and tell Joey the best thing you can do for Joey is to tell him he's not that good, okay? Because a big problem in our society today is little Joeys everywhere thinking that they're better than they are because they're not being afraid. Their parents are afraid to let kids fail today. College coaches complain more and more every day because kids show up and they don't know how to play baseball anymore. And what I mean by that, and this is important to me because this is something I've personally been through. Like, when I was coaching back in the day, if I'm in the 6th inning of a championship game, okay, and I got a runner on second base with less than 2 outs and the 3-hole hitter at the plate, right? I would have walked out to my pitcher and catcher, called time, and explained the situation and said, listen, we cannot let the best hitter on the team burn us right now. Okay, we need to pitch around him, walk him. I don't care. Let's get to the next guy, put ourselves in a position to roll the double play. Okay, and then it happens and you win the game and whatever. Parents, I would trade that trophy every single day of the week. And if I had to go back and do it again, I would sit my butt in the dugout, let Joey throw a fastball over the plate because Billy called it, watch the 3-hole hitter hit a 2-run walk-off, and when everyone's crying because we lost the game and everybody's upset, we're going to sit everybody down and we're going to have a learning moment. And learning moments sting. Failure hurts, but that's where growth is, folks. Like, you're going to tell Johnny and Billy, guys, look, Billy, Johnny, like, we lost that game. That's your fault. What do you mean it's our fault? It's your fault. You can't think about the situation. You have a runner on second base, the best hitter on the team, and you have first base open. If you walk him and put him on base, like, we can turn a double play and get out of this inning. You can't throw a pitch to hit to the best hitter on the team. Not in that situation, not at any level of baseball ever. And they'll never do it ever again, ever. Right? But those things don't happen anymore. Because as soon as something happens with Johnny or he gets benched, parents and kids complain and they call the school. And then the coach gets fired. Right? Like, there's been, or you leave the team because the team lost the game. Like, we have to start getting focused, just like hitting. It's not about the scap. Focus on the bigger picture. If it's about player development, it's about your kid moving on. Like, stop focusing on now. Like, the more failure they have now, the better, the more learning moments they have for later. People have to get off of that. You have to get off of that. There's people on this phone call guaranteed that need to hear that. And there's guaranteed kids on this call that need to be told no and need to be told they're not. Listen, all you guys work hard. You're with a great organization. You might be the best player in your state. Come out to California, kids. I got 13-year-olds up here throwing 87, hitting balls 97 with drop 3 wood. Okay? Like, there's competition everywhere. And you know what I tell those kids? I tell them, your competition's son is 3 years older than you. Like, if you're 14 right now, and you get to the big leagues when you're 22 and everything in your life goes perfect, you're going to be competing with Mike Trout for a freaking job. Good luck. Like, it's not just your age bracket. It's not just your age. It's everywhere, everybody, everywhere within a 4-year span up and a 4-year span down. Right? So you better find a way to get better, and that better be all that matters.
Eugene, it's so funny you say that. The other day, there was a thing on Twitter, and my son's 11. And there was a little clip, like, on the Flat Ground app or whatever it was, of a little 11-year-old throwing like 68 miles an hour. And my son has hit 60 miles an hour. And so I showed it to him. I said, hey, look at this little dude the same age as you. He's throwing about 8 miles an hour faster than you are. And his response was, oh, well, he's somewhere else. That's not really my competition, Dad. And I was like, no, that is your competition. And the kid in the Dominican is your competition, and the kid in Venezuela is your competition, and the kid in California is your competition. So your little 60 mile an hour is nothing, dude.
So a kid named Kibru Pam walked into my facility about a year and a half, I think it was 2 years ago, for an evaluation. He was 11 at the time. He hit 81 off the mound. He had 81 off the mound. I have it on video. He was 11, and you could look up his name, Kibru Pam. He was on the USA team the last 2 years, I believe. That's your competition, folks.
Yeah.
That's your competition. We got 7th graders up to 84, 87, 88. Like, had 8th graders up to 92, 93. Like, the competition, that's the elite of the elite. Like, that's the top 1%. Right? And those guys still have to keep getting better too. If they do not keep getting better, someone else is going to pass them by.
Yep. So, Scott, do you want to wrap this up with the environment stuff that we were going to talk to him about?
Yeah, so we started talking about a little bit of operations, so it's a good transition. So usually we have a segment toward the end. We call it Twins Critique, and because you told us to surprise you, here's a surprise. So the Twins Critique is basically twofold. It's one, to kind of tell everyone a little bit about what we do, and then also to get more feedback from the experts about how we kind of run things, and just because we're always trying to evolve. So with that said, Jason, I'll let you get a hitting or training question, and then I'll throw in a pitching question after. So to set the stage, for everyone that doesn't know about the Twins, we've got about 180 athletes. We've got 13 or 14 teams from 8U to 17U, plus our college guys coming back in. The two most important things for us are, one, we all speak the same language. The coaches, the instructors, players, we all speak the same language. We just started an internal coaches certification this year. So draft 1 is done now. We can go draft 2. And the other most important thing for us is to have everything in-house. So whether it's performance training, mental training, catching, hitting, pitching, outfield, infield, we have that all in our 18 to 20 week off-season program and have for the last 8 years since the inception when Jason started this. So with all that said, that's to preface it. A lot of advice that we hear online or on social media or from coaches, Eugene, is from guys that are working full-time. Myself and Jason have full-time jobs. We do this part-time. Our instructors are part-time. So their advice is when they work with, a group of 2 for an entire week or 1 or 5 or whatever it is. So I want to hear in both of our questions 2 things. 1, how do you do it? And 2, how would you do it if you were faced with a bunch of part-time employees, 180 athletes that show up sometimes and don't show up another time, and they're here once or twice or there and that. So with all that said, Jason, what's your first question?
So Eugene, here's our predicament. We start in late October and we go through mid-March with our hitting program. And that's just like he said, one facet of our total Twins camp that we run. But it's an 18-week period, and we have about 12 weeks where we basically go over mechanics, approach, situational hitting, timing, all of the foundational pieces of hitting. And in the last 6 weeks, we put the kids in the batter's box against their peer group and have them hit live to kind of see where they're all at after the 12 weeks, right? My question to you is, if you were the Twins head hitting guy and you had basically a full-time job like we do, and you had kids, 180 kids that you were looking at a week that were coming in one time, some of them are once, some of them are twice, some of them we see once every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. Like, how in the world, and the reason I ask this question is everyone's saying individualize, 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 right? But yet everyone has the same 5 or 6 or 7 KMIs that they're looking at. Well, I put 2 and 2 together and said, I have 180 kids. I don't know when they're coming in. So I'm going to build a program that we constantly drill in those 5 or 6 KMIs that we feel is important and try to make them all better at all of those, as opposed to getting this mountain of data of video and assessments and all this stuff that we're trying to constantly look at and make decisions off of. How would you tackle that? Because it's challenging. It's very hard for us to juggle kids that have varying attendances. We have 24 kids that could be in there at any one time in an hour, and that's 3 hours a night. So up to 24 kids from 6 to 7, up to 24 kids from 7 to 8, up to 24 kids from 8 to 9, and that's both on the pitching and the hitting side. And we've got 2 or 3 instructors in there with all those kids. Like, that's kind of the beast that we're trying to tame. How would you do it? Yeah, silence. The first time ever.
First of all, I feel for you guys and have tremendous respect for you guys having full-time jobs and also doing this. Again, your parents are very lucky. You guys better get a whole lot of Christmas cards and a whole lot of thank yous, because it's a huge undertaking. I myself have faced similar type deal, from running a travel organization to having 2 facilities. And even though it's full-time, you got 180 guys, and everyone's expecting individualized and personalized, so that there's a lot, right? Like, there's a lot. And what we're basically talking about is coaching efficiency. Okay, we're talking about coaching efficiency now, business efficiency now. How can we run the most efficient organization so we can spend the most amount of time doing the most important things? I would say first, I would prioritize what's most important to the organization and prioritize what's most important that you spend your time doing. And then figure out how many hours you actually have legitimately to spend on it. And then consider how much time you're spending on those other things and figure out what needs to go. Okay? Like, I can tell you this. This might be an unpopular answer or different than what everybody else would say, but I would bang things like assessments, right? Here's why I would do that. And when I say bang assessments, I don't mean banging skill assessments. I don't mean banging looking at their swings or looking at their throws, because that's what matters. I mean, I would bang spending a whole bunch of extra time collecting a whole bunch of information that we don't know how to use and we don't know how it's going to impact certain things. And then I would specifically collect assessments on guys that you're trying to problem solve. So if you have a guy that, because the skill is the assessment in and of itself. The swing is the assessment. The throwing is the assessment. Can the kid pitch or can he not pitch? Does he throw hard? Does he not throw hard? Can he throw a breaking ball for strikes or does he not? Can he hit the ball consistently to the middle of the field and find the barrel with juice, or can he not? That's the assessment. Everything else that exists in the whole world is a supplement to that, right? If it doesn't help him do that better, it's eyewash. If it does help him do that better, it's awesome, right? So there are times, dude, where you can literally, like, you give a kid 3 or 4 things, and then you give them a bunch of movement exercises that surround it, and a lot of good stuff happens just from that. And then if there's something that you can't figure out, then it's like, all right, well, I wonder why might that still be happening? What could be going on? Well, it could be he lacks dorsiflexion, you know, his ankle's real tight. So does that mean loosen up his ankle? No, because that's why he's fast. And generally you see lack of dorsiflexion go with really twitchy guys. You don't take that away from them. But what you can do, tell the kid to dig a hole in the dirt or the mound and angle his foot down this way to buy him some time. A lot of people have done that throughout history and didn't know why it worked or why they did it. We find that it helps guys buy some more time. If all of a sudden that works, what did you need to do? What did you need to do? Right? So, like, focus your energy on the things that are most important, right? And then work backwards off of that. And there's a lot of things, like movement-wise and drill-wise, you can create. Like, one of the things that we're working on that we'll end up releasing later this year is, like, think about, and it'll be on our website, think about like a potpourri, like a movement program that's going to hit specific things in specific areas, and it's bucketed for different types of movers. So you could bucket your players, or you can have everybody, and you can build competition around it. They can do it on their own. Million different ways to do it, but it's kind of like your weekly, daily vitamins, your movement, like, it's more important than stretching. It's damn sure more important than just generic regular lifting. Like, this is your movement program. You're learning how to move stronger and more effectively through the planes of motion that you're being asked to move through in your sport. So that's something that we're putting together that we're going to end up releasing, that we feel like is going to be really good, because a lot of that stuff, you can coach it up big time. But even if you don't, and they screw it up and they're not doing it perfect, they're still getting better from it, because they're working on stability from different positions or good efficient rotation, or, you know, like, it's making them better regardless of, like, you know, say how perfect they're executing. So you can trust they'll do it on their own. The other thing that we're trying to do, and like what we're doing that is going to carry over from Zoom really, really well, I think this COVID thing has been one of the best things that's ever happened to our players in-house. They're used to us really being there for them, and we still are, but they're really having to take some ownership right now. And we're really finding out who's paying attention and who's not. And we probably could have guessed those answers earlier, right? But like, this is forcing them to take ownership. And, like, we've talked to a whole bunch of pro teams about, you know, like, we have big league organizations that have purchased our courses for every coach in the organization, sometimes just the hitting guys, sometimes just the pitching guys. We've had organizations get our courses just for the strength and conditioning guys, like, not even for the hitting and the pitching yet, just the S&C guys. And, like, I think that one of the organizations is going to end up doing it hopefully next year, but I think this should happen. This is what their off-season programming should be. They should be giving their players, they want information, right? So give them good information, show them what you kind of want to happen, give them freedom to explore, and then give them a trusted resource with a whole bunch of, like, GIFs, hitting talks, videos, drills. Like, if the kid doesn't have a good decel pattern in his lower half, and he's working on decel patterning in his lower half, like, and he's trying all different drills that create it. Like, they're all creating the same thing, but some guys connect with one drill better than another. So like Joey and Billy may have the same issue, same movement profile, move the same way. Drill A works really well for Joey, doesn't work for Billy. Well, if Billy has the freedom to explore all of the lower half drills, right, around decel, now he's going to be able to take some ownership and find something that he really likes, that he thinks works. So now our job as coaches is helping them navigate and stay in the bandwidth, but we're not having to take all of the onus of problem solving, all of it on our own. Because the truth is, like, especially for you guys, like, and this, you know, maybe this is for your players more, for your parents. Look, there's this awesome, I've been playing baseball video games a long time. I love video games, and I hate to lose. And I really love like two video games more than all the others: MLB The Show and Tiger Woods Golf. Since before college, when those things first came out, I was all in on those. So
Amen, brother.
MLB The Show came out with a little bit of Madden here and there too. So you know, MLB The Show came out with a feature called build a road to the show, right? And your job is to sit there and try to build this 80 grade player that you get to the big leagues. It becomes an all-star. You got to play minor league games. You got to perform well, and you can change the way they look and add muscle and add size and take some off and add speed and do all these different things. That all these kids you're coaching, hey guys, guess what? This is real life road to the show, dummies. This is MLB road to the show in real life. You should love doing this more than playing video games. If you don't love taking ownership of your training and trying to love your process and trying to figure out how to get better and how to advance yourself to the next levels of real life, you just stop playing or don't complain when you don't get better. Like, you have to love it, and you have to be in on it, and you have to want it more than wanting your fake character in the video game to get there. Because in real life, it's really good. It's way cooler. It's way more fun. Like, you know, so that they have to understand that. And players too often, I think the way society is set now, they don't. They're paying to watch other people play video games now. I don't know what that is. It's weird, I guess. I don't know. Kids like it. That's fine. But I'd rather kick somebody else's butt in something than sit there and watch other people do it. I want to take part, you know?
Amen. Love it. I'm a big road to the or MLB The Show guy. We use that in camp. I use it to teach my son baseball. So I love the video game analogy. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, love the video games, teach it.
Well, that answered all my questions, because it kind of all encapsulated all of it. So I appreciate that answer. So before we end, and I want to keep you on a couple minutes afterwards after we end the live part, I've done this for not everyone, but most everyone that I brought on to the show is people that we either have learned from, know really well, or trust really well, or a combination of all of them. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell people about where to follow you, your book that you released, your programs. If you don't want to, that's fine, but I want to give you the platform because I know that a lot of our parents have been exposed to you. Now they've seen you live, and I think they're bought in. So if they want to look at what you have to offer, go ahead and let them know.
For sure. And yeah, I was just, before we did it, I was doing this for you guys. It wasn't like
It's not meant to be an infomercial.
But so I did write a book, Old School versus New School. We released it last June. It's done really, really well, amazingly. There's been in a game of baseball where everybody argues about stuff, there's been no bad reviews. So I don't know what that is, but it's the whole purpose of it was to kind of bring sides together. I've been doing this a long time. I've been in player development a really long time, and I was new school before there was a new school. I was doing this, I was on the hip mobility stuff in 2009, 2010, right? And I read the books early. I read the research early, saw some results, saw lack of results early, and constantly trying to iterate. Like I ran a driveline program, ran a ranch program, ran a NPA program. And then tried to piecemeal and figure out like what was it? How come this kid got better, this kid didn't? And ended up figuring stuff out. Got partnered with the biomechanics lab, And this book was to kind of bring the game together, the truth is that the old school wasn't wrong and the new school isn't all right. Okay. The truth is in here and the wisdom is in the middle. Okay. Wisdom is knowing that, like, sure, science tells us that I can't actually see. Coaches forever have said, look at the ball at the point of contact. You got to see the ball. And then science comes out and science says stuff like, you know what? That's dumb because it's impossible. Your eyes can't actually see the ball at contact. But guess what? When you try to look at the ball through contact, it's a trunk decel move. You're not over rotating anymore, right? Like, get the foot down early, okay? Does the foot get down early? No, it gets down when the ball, it should get down when the ball's about 15 feet away, right? But you can't actually start your swing until that front foot is getting in the ground and accepting force. So, if your front foot's in the air and your brain's saying yes, you have no choice but to spin. And coaches have always told that guy, like, yeah, get your front foot down early. And, now people don't want to listen to that. But if that kid actually does get into his front side, maybe he doesn't like that cue. Maybe it's go get the ball more. But when your front foot gets in the ground, like, you're not going to over rotate and peel out your hips. So there's a lot of things that need to be understood better. The game is going in a good direction, but needs to continue to go this direction, and it's going to end up coming back to the middle. So this is kind of the middle. We also released foundational movement courses. So that's foundational movement and level 1 hitting, level 1 assessments, level 1 pitching, level 1 assessments for pitching. And that's all based on, like, human movement, and it allows people to kind of look through, kind of understand the why all this stuff is happening, but it's also made very, very simple. It's very direct, clear, easy to understand videos that are like 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long. And then we also released a website to piggyback off of it, which is a mentorship program. So that's like, think about remote training for coaches and players, where, like, the courses are why we believe what we believe, how the human body moves, how we assess how it moves. This is how we train it. And then deeper understandings of a bunch of stuff. And then lots of stuff like you guys are doing right now. Like, we're doing Zooms every day. We've had everybody from, Brent Strom, like, we have big league hitting and pitching coaches, all the way down, but a lot of the best minds in the game, and just trying to share good information to help people figure it out. Because I know for me, it was a really tough figuring it out. I had to go through the gamut of everything before there was a lot of this stuff. So, 108_performance on Twitter and Instagram. And we also have 108 hitting and 108 pitching pages that everybody can follow as well. And we try to put as much free good content up there as possible as well.
Yep. I want to reiterate what Eugene said. He specifically told us a few weeks ago when we reached out that he did not want to do that. He also then said, hey, surprise me with questions. So I kind of threw that on him. But Jason and I each bought a book. I think I bought a couple of them. Jason might have a bunch of the board members bought his book. We bought his programs. We've been through them. So we just highly recommend them. We just want to give you that opportunity as a thank you.
Appreciate it.
Jason, was there anything last minute right here?
Yeah, I just want to thank Eugene too. Ever since I met you in Nashville at Pitchapalooza, I've been following you pretty closely, and we've really made a big change in the last couple of years since you and I met, when I started, picking up some of your information, and it's changed our program. I think it's going to change our program for the better. So I appreciate that influence, and just you trusting us to kind of bounce stuff off of you and becoming, part of our network. It's been great.
Well, I appreciate that, man. That's what it's all about. It means a lot. Happy to do it. And, hearing that people are, good stories like that, and hearing that people are getting results with stuff that we've been able to help share, that makes it worth it. So, really good to hear. And that's awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll see everyone back Friday, a couple days here, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time again. So thank you everyone for tuning in.